The quantum slipstream collapsed with a silent fury, leaving behind the human exploration vessel Pathfinder. Space around the ship seemed to ripple and settle, as if the very fabric of reality was still adjusting to its unexpected arrival. Commander Vexnar of the Zoraxian patrol vessel Razor's Edge felt the first tremor of unease the moment the human ship materialized. His six-fingered hands gripped the command console, iridescent scales along his forearms shifting with barely contained tension. The ship's advanced sensors had been tracking anomalous readings for solar cycles, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared them for this moment. The Pathfinder hung in space like a predator waiting to strike, though its design suggested anything but aggression. Its hull seemed to shimmer, not with the rigid metallic structure of traditional spacecraft, but with a fluid, almost organic quality that defied conventional engineering. Soft bioluminescent lines traced intricate patterns across its surface, pulsing with a rhythm that suggested something more than mere technological function. Proximity alert chirped the ship's AI system, its voice clinical and emotionless. Unknown vessel detected. Quantum signature. Human origin. Vexinar's second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krolax, leaned forward. His translation implant crackled with a mix of fear and professional curiosity. "They've entered restricted space," he muttered, mandibles clicking with agitation. "Shall I initiate standard challenge protocols?" But Vexinar remained still. Something about the human ship demanded more than standard procedure. Its very existence challenged everything the Zoraxian Confederacy understood about interstellar travel and technological capability. "Full spectrum scan," he commanded, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the ship's command deck. "Every frequency, every possible wavelength. I want to know everything about that vessel." The scanning team exchanged nervous glances. The Pathfinder made no aggressive moves, no attempts at communication. It simply existed, a technological enigma that seemed to defy the very laws of physics the Zorax had spent millennia understanding. On the human ship's bridge, Captain Alina Rodriguez watched the Zoraxian vessel with calculated patience. Her crew moved with a synchronicity that bordered on the supernatural, each motion precise, each system working in a harmony that suggested something far beyond traditional human technological capabilities. "They're preparing to scan," she said quietly, more a statement of fact than a warning. Her tactical officer, a woman named Dr. Aisha Namir, simply nodded. No further explanation was needed. The first tendrils of the Zoraxian scan touched the Pathfinder's hull. For most ships, this would be an intrusive process, a violation of technological sovereignty. But the Pathfinder was different. As the scan began, the ship's systems didn't just respond, they engage. Quantum-entangled communication networks sparked to life. Adaptive hull materials began a complex dance of molecular reconfiguration. What the Zoraxians thought would be a simple technological assessment became something else entirely, a first contact that would reshape galactic understanding forever. Commander Vexnar would later recall this moment as the instant everything changed. The moment a single scan revealed that humanity was something entirely unexpected, a civilization that didn't just challenge technological boundaries, but existed beyond them entirely. The scan continued, and with each passing moment, the impossible became inevitable. The first layer of the scan should have been simple, routine, predictable. It wasn't. Senior scanning technician Zoric's sensory tendrils began to tremble as the initial data streams flooded the Razor's Edge's primary analysis matrix. What started as a standard technological assessment transformed into something that defied every established principle of galactic engineering. "Recalibrate," he muttered, more to himself than to his increasingly agitated team. "Something can't be reading like this." But it was. The Pathfinder's hull wasn't just a protective shell. It was a living, adaptive system that seemed to breathe and respond to the scanning waves. Molecular structures shifted and realigned with each passing microsecond, creating complex patterns that looked more like biological neural networks than traditional spacecraft engineering. Quantum entanglement communication nodes danced across the ship's systems, creating computational matrices that seemed to anticipate the scan itself. It was as if the ship was not just being examined, but was actively engaging with the examination, learning, adapting, transforming in real time. "Impossible," whispered Sub-Commander Krulax, leaning over Zorik Station. His translation implant struggled to process the incoming data, flickering with error messages and fragmented interpretations. On the Pathfinder's bridge, Dr. Aisha Namir allowed herself the slightest smile. The Zoraxian scan was precisely as predictable as they had planned. Each layer of technology revealed another impossible wonder. Propulsion systems that seemed to manipulate quantum fields like musical instruments, bending the very fabric of space-time. Energy distribution networks that moved beyond traditional power management. These were living systems that breathed and pulsed with an almost sentient intelligence. The scanning team began to panic. Their most advanced technological assessment tools were being treated like primitive probes, redirected and analyzed by the very system they were meant to examine. The Pathfinder wasn't just defending itself, it was studying the Zoraxian technology in return. "Commander," Zorik called out, his voice cracking with a mixture of scientific excitement and pure terror. "The ship's systems, they're not just advanced, they're impossible." Vexnar stepped closer, his scaled hand gripping the technician's shoulder. The scan had been running for mere minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Hidden subroutines continued their complex dance, quantum and classical computing intertwining in ways that shattered every known technological paradigm. Most shocking was the ship's adaptive response. Where other vessels would show static resistance, the Pathfinder's systems flowed and transformed. Defensive mechanisms emerged not as rigid barriers, but as dynamic, intelligent responses that seemed to anticipate threats before they could fully form. Captain Rodriguez watched the Zoraxian vessel with calculated patience. This was more than a technological demonstration. It was a carefully orchestrated message. Humanity was no longer a species to be overlooked or underestimated. The scan continued, each moment revealing another layer of technological marvel that would send shockwaves through every advanced civilization in the galaxy. The Pathfinder was more than a ship. It was a statement, a declaration of a technological renaissance that would redefine everything known about innovation, adaptation, and the very nature of technological progress. The breaking point came 17 minutes and 32 seconds into the scan. Commander Vexnar watched as his most brilliant technical minds began to unravel. Senior technicians who had spent decades mastering their craft now sat frozen, their sophisticated neural implants overwhelmed by data that defied comprehension. "Active countermeasures detected," Zorik announced, his voice a mixture of professional calm and barely contained hysteria. "The human vessel is not just responding to our scan. It's analyzing our scanning technology." The command deck fell into a horrified silence. Sub-Commander Krulax slammed his six-fingered hand against the communication console. "This is a violation of Galactic scanning protocols," he shouted, more to reassure himself than anyone else. But his outburst rang hollow. They were well beyond protocols now. The Pathfinder's technological response was surgical. Not a defensive wall, not an aggressive counterstrike, but a precise, almost surgical deconstruction of the Zoraxian scanning systems. It was dissecting their technology in real time, revealing vulnerabilities the Zorax hadn't even known existed. On the bridge, Captain Alina Rodriguez watched the unfolding scenario with calculated precision. This was more than a technological demonstration. It was a carefully choreographed message to every advanced civilization watching. "Quantum intrusion detected in secondary analysis matrix," another technician called out, her voice trembling. The ship's most secure computational systems were being mapped, analyzed, and understood faster than they could be protected. Vexnar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Pure, unadulterated fear. The debate erupted suddenly and violently. One faction of senior officers demanded immediate aggressive action. "Destroy the human vessel," eliminate the threat before it could fully reveal itself. Another group, driven by scientific curiosity, argued for continued observation. "We cannot destroy what we do not understand," argued Dr. Excelna, the ship's chief science officer. Her neural tendrils were fully extended, processing the incoming data at rates that would have driven lesser minds to madness. But military pragmatism was winning. Weapon systems began to power up, subtle at first, then with increasing intensity. The Razor's Edge transformed from a scientific vessel to a potential instrument of destruction in mere moments. The Pathfinder made no move, no defensive posture, no aggressive response. It simply continued to exist, a technological marvel that seemed to watch the Zoraxian crew's internal breakdown with something almost resembling amusement. "They're learning," Zorik whispered, a revelation that sent a collective shudder through the command deck. "With each microsecond of the scan, they're learning everything about us." It wasn't just the ship's technology they were revealing. It was the fundamental weakness of the Zoraxian understanding of technological progress. Each moment of the scan stripped away layers of assumed superiority, exposing a civilization that had grown complacent in its technological dominance. Vexnar knew they were witnessing a moment that would redefine everything. One human ship, one scan, and everything they thought they understood about technological advancement was crumbling before their eyes. The communication came without warning. One moment, the Razor's Edge bristled with tension, weapon systems primed, crew frozen between panic and aggression. The next, a transmission cut through their communication arrays. Clean, precise, almost casual in its clarity. Captain Elena Rodriguez appeared on their primary view screen. She wasn't dressed in a military uniform, nor did she present herself with the rigid formality of a traditional naval officer. Instead, she wore what appeared to be a simple black jacket, her posture relaxed, her expression a mixture of calm professionalism and something that could only be described as mild amusement. "Zoraxian patrol vessel Razor's Edge," she began, her voice translated with perfect clarity. "I believe we need to have a conversation." Commander Vexnar felt his respiratory system momentarily seize. This was not first contact protocol. This was not diplomatic procedure. This was something entirely different. Dr. Excelna, the ship's chief science officer, leaned forward. Her neural tendrils were fully extended, analyzing every microscopic detail of the transmission. The communication itself was a marvel, not just a simple audio-visual link, but a complex data stream that seemed to carry layers of information beyond the immediate visual and auditory signals. "We are aware that our arrival may have caused some consternation," Rodriguez continued, a slight smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "I assure you, our intentions are purely exploratory." Sub-Commander Krillax found his voice first. "You have violated restricted space," he sputtered, mandibles clicking with agitation. "Your vessel's scanning profile suggests technologies that are fundamentally impossible." Rodriguez's laugh was unexpected. Not mocking, not aggressive, genuinely amused. "Impossible is a word that loses meaning rather quickly," she responded. Behind her, the bridge of the Pathfinder was a study in controlled chaos. Crew members moved with a synchronicity that suggested something beyond traditional human cooperation. Holographic displays danced with complex data streams, adaptive interfaces shifting and transforming in real time. "We're here to expand understanding," Rodriguez said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "The scan your vessel initiated was precisely what we anticipated. A test, a probing of capabilities." Vexnar felt a chill run through his scaled body. This was no accidental encounter. Every moment, every technological marvel, had been carefully orchestrated. Dr. Excelna's analysis confirmed what they all were beginning to understand. The Pathfinder's arrival, the scan, this communication, it was all part of a meticulously planned demonstration. Humanity was not seeking conflict. They were making a statement. "We are prepared to share," Rodriguez continued, "but on our terms, not as supplicants, not as subordinates." as equals. The transmission carried something beyond words. Data packets embedded within the communication began to unpack themselves across Zoraxian systems, glimpses of technological principles that would take decades to fully comprehend. First contact, they were learning, was never about a single moment. It was about understanding, and humanity had just rewritten every rule of that understanding. The quantum communication network erupted like a supernova of information. Within 6 standard galactic hours, news of the Pathfinder's encounter with the Zoraxian patrol vessel had spread to every major civilization's intelligence and diplomatic networks. Data streams, encrypted fragments, and raw sensor logs cascaded through interstellar communication channels, each transmission adding another layer to an increasingly impossible narrative. The Stellar Concordance Communication Hub, a massive orbital installation that served as the galaxy's primary information exchange, found itself overwhelmed. Quantum data processors that had never shown signs of strain began to buckle under the sheer volume and complexity of incoming transmissions. Verify, demanded Archival Director Keltar, his multispectral neural implants working overtime. Cross-reference every single data point. But verification was impossible. The data defied conventional analysis. Each transmission seemed to contain layers within layers, technological insights, strategic implications, and something that went beyond mere information. It was as if the human transmission itself was a living, evolving entity. On a dozen different homeworlds, scientific councils convened emergency sessions. The Miracon Research Collective pulled their top minds from deep space exploration projects. The Quantum Technological Institute of Sen Prime suspended all ongoing research, redirecting every computational resource to analyze the fragmentary data. Most chilling was what the data suggested, and what it deliberately concealed. The human ship had not just appeared. It had chosen its moment with surgical precision. The scan was more than a technological demonstration. It was a message, a calculated reveal of capabilities that would reshape every existing understanding of technological development. Diplomatic channels began to fracture. Some species saw opportunity. Others saw an unprecedented threat. The Taurian Mercantile Consortium immediately began recalibrating their technological adaptation strategies. If humans could do this, whatever this was, traditional technological trade would never be the same. Entire economic models teetered on the brink of obsolescence. Military strategists across multiple star systems began desperate analyses. The Pathfinder's technological profile suggested capabilities that made current defensive systems look like primitive toys. Entire fleet architectural concepts would need complete reimagining. It's not just the technology, Dr. Lyra Chen, a human xenotechnological expert stationed on the Proxima diplomatic station, told her alien colleagues. It's the approach. Humanity doesn't just develop technology. We fundamentally reimagine technological possibility. Her statement would be quoted and requoted across 1,000 different communication networks. The quantum communication network continued to pulse, each transmission adding another layer to an increasingly complex narrative. The single scan of one human ship had done what decades of diplomatic efforts could not. It had completely disrupted the established galactic order. And this was just the beginning. Somewhere, on the bridge of the Pathfinder, Captain Elena Rodriguez allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Every civilization was now asking the same question. Who are the humans, and what do they want? Precisely the question they had intended to provoke. The human response was nothing short of extraordinary. While alien civilizations scrambled to comprehend the Pathfinder's technological marvel, Earth remained almost frustratingly calm. No press conferences, no diplomatic statements, just a continued mission of exploration that seemed to mock the galaxy's growing anxiety. At the United Earth Interstellar Research Center, Dr. Elena Rodriguez's team worked with a methodical precision that bordered on the supernatural. Banks of quantum computers processed incoming data from the Pathfinder, creating complex models that seemed to predict galactic reactions before they occurred. "They're running diagnostic scenarios," muttered Dr. Aisha Namir, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces, not just of the ship's systems, but of every possible diplomatic and technological response from our galactic neighbors. The Pathfinder itself continued its mission, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Star charts were updated. Quantum-level astronomical observations continued. To all external appearances, it was just another exploration vessel, if such a term could possibly apply to a ship that had just redefined technological understanding. Diplomatic channels remained deliberately ambiguous. When pressed, United Earth representatives offered nothing more than carefully measured statements. "We are an exploratory mission," they would say, each word calculated to reveal nothing and everything simultaneously. But those who knew how to look could see the deeper strategy. Every alien diplomatic mission suddenly found their technological assessment teams working overtime. Human research databases, selectively and strategically made available, contained technological papers that read like fever dreams of innovation. Theoretical works that bridged quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and material sciences in ways that previous civilizations had never conceived possible. The most sophisticated artificial intelligence in the galaxy was the Human Diplomatic AI System, nicknamed ARIA, Advanced Relational Intelligence Algorithm. Where traditional diplomatic AIs provided static analysis, ARIA seemed to breathe with a living intelligence. It anticipated diplomatic tensions, calculated response probabilities, and managed information flow with a complexity that made previous systems look like children's toys. "It's not about showing everything," Captain Rodriguez explained to her senior staff during a private briefing. "It's about showing just enough to make them question everything they understand." Military strategists across Earth watched with a mixture of pride and calculated patience. The Pathfinder was more than a ship. It was a statement, a declaration that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as a supplicant, not as a threat, but as something entirely unprecedented. Senior Defense Coordinator Marcus Chen reviewed the latest computational models. "We're not looking to conquer," he told his team. "We're looking to fundamentally reshape the understanding of what's possible." The alien civilizations continued their frantic analysis. Each new piece of information raised a dozen more questions. The humans seemed to be playing a game with rules that no one else understood, revealing just enough to provoke curiosity, but never enough to provide complete understanding. On the Pathfinder's bridge, the crew worked with a synchronicity that suggested something beyond traditional human cooperation. Adaptive interfaces transformed in real time. Computational matrices danced with possibilities that defied conventional understanding. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, the message continued to spread. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The fracture began within the Zoraxian leadership. Senior Counselor Vexera stood alone in the high-security deliberation chamber, her neural implants processing the accumulated data from the Pathfinder encounter. Where her colleagues saw a threat, she saw opportunity. Where they demanded aggressive posturing, she recognized a fundamental transformation of galactic understanding. "We are approaching this incorrectly," she announced to the Zoraxian High Council, her voice cutting through layers of bureaucratic tension. "This is not about defense. This is about understanding." The chamber fell silent. Her presentation was surgical, layer after layer of technological analysis, each slide revealing not just the human ship's capabilities, but the profound philosophical approach behind those capabilities. The Pathfinder wasn't just a technological marvel. It was a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to innovation, cooperation, and exploration. Some council members recoiled. Others leaned forward with growing fascination. Simultaneously, across multiple star systems, similar conversations were happening. The Miracon Research Collective began discreet diplomatic overtures. The Quantum Technological Institute of Sen Prime suspended their defensive research protocols, redirecting resources toward collaborative exploration. Dr. Lyra Chen, the human xenotechnological expert, found herself at the center of an unprecedented diplomatic storm. Alien delegations sought her insights, not as a potential threat, but as a bridge to understanding. Humanity doesn't seek conquest, she would explain repeatedly. We seek expansion, not of territory, but of understanding. The first unofficial alliance formed quietly, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but through scientific collaboration. Research teams from 3 different civilizations began sharing quantum computational models, their work facilitated by the human-developed ARI diplomatic AI. On the Pathfinder, Captain Alina Rodriguez watched these developments with calculated patience. This was precisely the scenario they had anticipated. Not conflict, not submission, but a fundamental reimagining of interspecies cooperation. The Taurian Mercantile Consortium was the first major economic power to officially shift stance. Their economists recognize something profound. Human technological approach wasn't just innovative, it was transformative. Entire new markets would emerge from this single encounter. Military strategists across multiple civilizations found themselves in an unprecedented position. The human technological approach made traditional defensive strategies obsolete, but it also presented something more intriguing, a potential path to stability through mutual technological elevation. We are witnessing the birth of a new galactic paradigm, Senior Counselor Vexera told her closest advisors, and humanity is not conquering. They are inviting. The invitation was subtle, embedded in technological papers, suggested through diplomatic algorithms, presented in research collaborations that seemed to emerge organically, yet were clearly part of a larger, more sophisticated strategy. Somewhere between technological marvel and philosophical revolution, the rules of galactic interaction were being rewritten, not through force, not through threat, but through a profound demonstration of what was possible when innovation knew no boundaries. The Pathfinder continued its journey, each moment another invitation, each data stream another possibility. 6 months after the Pathfinder's initial encounter, the galaxy had transformed. The Galactic Collaborative Summit convened on the neutral space station Nexus Prime, a gathering that would have been unimaginable mere months earlier. Delegations from 17 different civilizations sat around a quantum-linked conference table, their very presence a testament to the profound shift humanity had initiated. Captain Alina Rodriguez was conspicuously absent. Instead, a holographic representation of the human diplomatic AI, Araya, guided the discussions with a nuanced intelligence that left even the most sophisticated alien diplomats in awe. Collaboration is not submission, Araya's melodic voice explained, simultaneously translated across multiple linguistic matrices. It is mutual elevation. The technological exchanges were unprecedented, where previous galactic interactions had been guarded, competitive, even hostile. This summit represented something entirely new. Research databases were opened, technological principles were shared, collaborative development projects were initiated that would have been unthinkable just months before. Dr. Lyra Chen, now the primary human liaison, watched from a secondary observation deck. Her neural interface tracked multiple conversation streams, analyzing diplomatic nuances in real time. The Zorexian delegation, once the most aggressive opponents of human involvement, now sat at the forefront of collaborative proposals. Senior Counselor Vexera had become an unexpected champion of human-led diplomatic approaches, her technological assessments revealing the profound potential of collaborative innovation. Our previous understanding of technological development was fundamentally limited, she told the assembly. Her words carried the weight of a civilization, fundamentally reimagining its place in the universe. The economic implications were staggering. The Taurian Mercantile Consortium had already developed entirely new market categories based on the collaborative technological principles introduced by humanity. Traditional resource extraction gave way to knowledge exchange. Military budgets were being redirected toward joint research initiatives. Araya's holographic representation shifted, displaying complex computational models that illustrated potential collaborative paths. Each projection was a kaleidoscope of possibility, technological developments that transcended individual species' capabilities. Most remarkable was what remained unspoken. The Pathfinder's initial scan had been more than a technological demonstration. It had been an invitation, a carefully orchestrated reveal that challenged every existing paradigm of interspecies interaction. "We are not seeking to lead," Araya explained, its voice carrying both precision and philosophical depth. "We are seeking to expand the very definition of what is possible." Military strategists from multiple civilizations found themselves in an unprecedented position. Traditional defensive strategies had become obsolete. The human approach suggested a new paradigm, where technological collaboration was the most effective form of security. On Earth, the team that designed the Pathfinder's mission watched the summit with a mixture of pride and calculated patience. This was not an endpoint. This was a beginning. As the summit concluded, a new galactic charter was drafted. Not a treaty of limitations, but a declaration of collaborative potential. The single scan of one human ship had done what centuries of diplomatic efforts could not. It had transformed the very concept of interspecies interaction. The universe watched, and everything had changed.